Welcome back with the Craft Whiskey Boys. We're here today to answer some of the questions our fans have been telling us.
What have they been telling us?
Yeah, why are they telling questions?
Yeah, they're asking us questions.
I never heard of a fan telling you a question before.
Well, it's quite simple. It's quite a common question that comes up. Where does the whiskey get all its flavour from? You know, a lot of people tend to think that 80% of the flavour comes from the wood.
Right.
But I reckon you have a differing opinion on that.
I agree with that opinion, but I also do have a different opinion. It's good. So let's try some of this.
Makes sense.
Daluin.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Is it Daluin? I think that's
Daluin.
A little touch of water always makes this. Oh, that's not going to work. We need to go a wee bit more.
There we go.
Aye.
I like
So,
it.
cheers. So, question was, 80% of whiskey's flavour comes from the barrel. I've been on camera and I've said this myself, and I firmly believe it, depending on the whiskey. So you take, for example, we take Devil's Keep, right? So Devil's Keep, this is about 80 to 85% of the flavour comes from the barrel in this. I've tasted the spirit when it was made. I've seen it all through its life. In this specific whiskey, where it was made, how it was made, the barrels that it was in is about 80%. That being said, that is not the case for all whiskies at all, right? So your answer was, does it all come from that? It depends on the whiskey, right? So sometimes you've got whiskey that's very, very young. So let's say it's 3 years old. Sometimes that whiskey wasn't in a first fill bourbon barrel, or it wasn't in a sherry barrel or a virgin oak barrel. It was in a third fill. So the wood doesn't have that much to give, and it's only 3 years old. It hasn't had that much time to interact. It could have been matured in a cold climate. So really the spirit's gonna shine through way more than the wood. You could have like 70% spirit, 30% wood in that particular scenario. So you have to remember, you've got, and you guys know this, right? We all, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. We get it. Number one, you got to understand the barrel's important, the spirit's important, where it's matured, the actual climate it's matured in, where it's stored in the warehouse, right? What else am I missing here? The time, the maturation period. 3 years versus 23 years, drastically different.
Massively.
Because 3 years is going to have this much influence in the wood, 23 years is going to have this much influence in the wood. So it's never, 80% is a blanket statement that people throw around. It's absolutely factual for this whiskey. It is not factual for all whiskeys. Thoughts?
I think that's a very good overview and a fair assessment. And so it's very difficult to give a good, or not a good, I mean that was a good answer. So it's hard to put a figure on it.
It is.
Yeah? There's too many variables involved. So maybe a 3-year-old would be, like Jay said, 30% to do with the wood.
If it was in a third fill and it was, say, matured in Ireland, but if you take a 3-year-old in a virgin oak cask and you put it in Kentucky at the top of a warehouse, it's gonna be nearly 80% wood. So you gotta remember, it's like, as you guys know, you could take the same two whiskeys, you take the one batch of whiskey off one still, you get the exact same barrels, both first fill bourbon barrels. You take one of them and you ship it up to the north of Ireland and you put it at the bottom of a warehouse where it's the coldest part of Ireland. Right at the tippy top, up by Bushmills, right near the Giant's Causeway, as far as you can get. You take another barrel, you take it right down to Skibbereen, as far as you can go to the other end. Put it at the top of a warehouse. Drastically different climates, exact same whiskey, exact same barrel. They're gonna have completely different maturations. Therefore, the wood down here in Skibbereen is gonna have more of an influence on the whiskey versus the wood up in Bushmills, up in County, or up in the north of Ireland. So,
I'm going to cut you off there, Jay, because
Thank
you're
you very
waffling.
much. Thank you
What do
very
you
much.
think there, Mo?
Well, no, I'd agree. And I think testament to that fact as well. And we're talking about where the barrel's kept in the warehouse, whether it's on the top, whether it's on the bottom. I'd like to go to an even bigger extreme. When we go to, say, hotter climate countries, Israel, for example, what they're doing there. What's the maturation period there? For a 3-year-old that they may have,
yeah.
like we said, you could be looking at a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, something that be matured in Ireland for that same period.
Yeah, well, you're talking, you could mature whiskey in the climate in Israel, right, in 2 years that you probably matured in 10 years in Ireland. So again, that's why we made a video about age statements are bullshit, because this could say 25 years, and that's like, oh, 25-year-old whiskey, it must be amazing. Well, hang on a sec, what barrel was it in? Where was it matured? What climate was it matured in? They all take apart, because a 23-year-old Pappy Van Winkle, which is a Kentucky bourbon, is so much wood in the mouth. I'd say it's 99% wood. It's not even palatable enough, for my opinion, to drink. Everyone raves about Pappy Van Winkle. Fucking drink Pappy Van Winkle. Yeah, 15-year-old's beautiful. 23-year-olds just gone way too far. So too long in certain climates in the wood, if it's virgin oak, it's just too much. So your answer to the question is Milk and Honey's the Israel Whiskey Company. 2 years is probably enough. 2 years sometimes in Kentucky is probably enough in certain circumstances.
That's why age statements of bourbon.
I'm going to cut you off, Solly, because you've been waffling. So what I would say...
Question from
Oh, we got a question from the audience.
I grew up in Highlands of Scotland, and I was introduced to whiskey by a crofter up in it, and he always used to say, have a malt, don't drink blended, but then that was his choice, and if you want to add water, have a finger of whiskey, a finger of water. What, with regard to the water, is a good combo? Because
So unfortunately, what was your friend's name?
It was called Callum McFarlane.
Okay, so Callum McFarlane.
2 years old.
With all due respect to Callum McFarlane, unless he was drinking the same whiskey, to do a ratio like that is a bit uneducated when it comes to whiskey. So no disrespect to him. But here's what I would say. You can't just do a ratio of 1 finger of whiskey, 1 finger of water, because if I take this whiskey or I take this whiskey here, they've got different ABVs, right? So the alcohol by volume is different on all different whiskeys. Some is 56% cask strength, some is 43%, some is, this one's 48% cask strength.
Crash test.
Oh, I will indeed. Okay.
Do you know what,
So
just to be sure.
I'll use you as
Just to
well.
be safe,
Okay,
I
sorry.
think. So
No
we won't
problem.
take any risks.
Yeah, you definitely won't take any risks. So the answer to the question is, here's what I do. I take any whiskey. Do you want some, Mark?
We need to be sure.
Oh, okay. Jesus. Quickly. So here's the question of the answer. The answer of the question.
Question of the answers.
Thank you.
Coming.
So I would take any whiskey and I'd look at the alcohol by volume, and then what I'd do is I'd pour a glass and I'd drink it no matter what it was. Cask strength, as hot as you want. I would taste it because they put it in a bottle like that for a reason. Now, it may be that their taste buds are completely different than mine, which is most likely, because for me, any whiskey at 56%, I don't care if it's 43 years old, it's too hot and it's too high for my taste buds. The alcohol overpowers the flavors of the whiskey, and I like to bring the ABV down. So what I would do is I would pour a glass, I would take a sip, I'd see where it's at, and I'd see if the alcohol burn is too much and I can't get all the flavors of the whiskey. Then what I do is I take a pipette, much like this, and I would add some water. Give it a second to amalgamate, taste it again, nose it, try it, see where it's at and go, okay, the alcohol burn's still a little bit too high. I've probably brought it from 56%, say, down to 46%. Now I want to bring it down a bit lower. For me, I think the perfect ABV on most whiskeys is around 33%. Not everybody agrees with that. Blenders bring a whiskey down to the 20s, 21, 22%. Now that's a little bit too watery to be palatable enough to enjoy all the time, but that's what a blender will do to be able to get all the nuances out of the whiskey, get the flavors and everything, to really understand what's in there, to be able to blend properly. To be able to enjoy a whiskey, I like it around the 33, 36% mark, but you can't bottle a whiskey at that. Must be 40% or above. Governments, they tax the amount of alcohol in the bottle, so it must be, to be legally called whiskey in Ireland and Scotland and in America, it must be 40% or above. Right? So they, even if the blender felt that whiskey needed to be at 33%, they're legally not allowed to do it and call it whiskey.
It was the EY or the Y. What's the difference between whiskey spelled?
Spelled with an E or spelled without an E? It's a very, very long video that I'll do another day. It's spelled both ways and it's equally good both ways. Irish invented whiskey and we spelled it both ways interchangeably. So initially, it only started getting predominantly spelt with an E in Ireland after a lot of what they would call cheaper Scotch whiskey hit the market in the mid-1800s, and the Irish wanted to protect what they had. The Dublin whiskey specifically was the champagne of sparkling wines. It was the preeminent best whiskey on earth. That's what people paid a premium for Dublin whiskey. And then Dublin whiskey wanted to protect themselves and went with the EY to a point. Now, there's a lot of different opinions on this. I know my history better than anyone. I've read every single book on the subject. I won't go into it now. You can use them interchangeably. Scotch do not own without the E. A lot of people get so passionate in Scotland. They're like, oh, no. In Scotland, we spell it without the E. Well, that's because the Irish took with the E to differentiate from what they were doing. Japanese spell it without the E. Canadians spell it without the E. Americans spell it with the E. Irish spell it with the E. It's interchangeable. Doesn't really matter.
No right, no wrong.
No right and wrong. In Ireland, we spelled it both ways in the 1800s. Both ways. But we choose the E now, but it doesn't mean that we can still legally spell it both ways. We can spell it with or without. Scotch don't own the right, or the Scottish, should I say Scotch? It's a bad. Yeah, the Scots or the Scottish. Yeah, no, they don't own the rights to just without the E. That's some people. That's a massive misconception, because the Japanese use it and so do the Canadians.
What impact does regular ice cubes versus ice like stones, whiskey stones have?
With ice cubes, it's obviously going to dilute at an uncontrollable rate, so there is no control in terms of the ABV and the level it's going down to. With whiskey stones, it doesn't do that at all. It just chills the whiskey in terms, really, and it keeps it at the level it should be enjoyed. And really, that's how I do it. Yeah.
So you've got the pipette and the water. When you take a whiskey and you pour it into your glass, right? You're going to taste it, see where it's at, use the pipette, put the water in, see exactly where it's at. When you've got the flavor that you want, if you like a whiskey cold, which I don't, I like my whiskey warm, or at least room temperature, but if you like it cold, don't put ice in it. Bring it to where you want it with the pipette, then add the whiskey stones in, and then that will chill it to where you want it to be without the dilution rate of the ice affecting the flavor of the whiskey of where you brought it to that perfect temperature, which is exactly what Mo was trying to say.
You, with wines, red wine has to be a certain temperature, white wine, different temperatures and all the rest of it. You said you like yours room temperature. Is there a kind of rule of thumb, or how would you...
Whiskey's one of those great things where there's no rule of thumb. You can do whatever you want, right? If you want it cold, drink it cold. If you want it mixed in a cocktail, go ahead and do it. If you want it neat, if you want loads of water, we tried a whiskey the other day, Japanese whiskey with sparkling water. What was it? Was it Hibiki?
It was
Suntory.
Suntory whiskey.
Mixed with sparkling water. However the hell you like a bloody whiskey, drink it that way. Anyone that tells you how to drink a whiskey, I'll tell you how I drink a whiskey and how I think a whiskey can be best enjoyed if you don't know how to do it yourself. And that's kind of what this show is about. It's like, here's what we do. You don't have to take our advice. We're not saying this is the way it must be done. Anyone that tries to back down like these idiots in the wine business.
I spoke to a master of wine, and I made that stupid, naive question. I said to him, what's the best wine you've ever drank, or you'd recommend? And he said, turn that round. What's the best wine you've ever drunk? And that's the best wine. It's not about what you should be drinking, it's actually what you like.
No, it is. It's all about what you like. The problem with his answer was, what if you've only drank one wine and it was from a gas station you didn't know? So he should at least give you a tip.
4-star, or maybe...
Yeah, but exactly, but yeah, it's all preference. It's like
It's all subjective. At the end of the day, everybody's got different palates, they like different things, and that's, I guess, what we're trying to explain here, really. We'll tell you what we like, what we enjoy, and we're happy to pass on what we know. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to go and find out what works best for you. And luckily, there's a plethora and a multitude of whiskies and good little things to enjoy.
We've just done a video on, what was the question, the main question?
The question was, where does whiskey get the majority of its flavour from?
We started the question with a full bottle.
Shameful.
Yeah, I
Do
know.
better.
We should probably stay and finish it.
We should,
But hopefully we answered it. We took a few questions from some people that are hanging here in the audience.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I hope it was answered. The reality is that we know what we know. You take what we say and use it or don't. It's all subjective.